The midnight shift. It took me 4 months of relentless networking to secure a post at the Obsidian Gantry, an ultra-exclusive industrial manufacturing depot nestled near the iron yards. This wasn't a standard machining facility where a solid resume and a union card got you through the gates. You required a high-level corporate sponsorship and an absolute willingness to work the graveyard rotation without asking questions. Over the past year, I managed to blend into the scenery. I pulled the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, always stationed at the same CNC lathe, always processing the same dense alloy cylinders. The operation was globally renowned for its proprietary structural girders. The company documentation claimed the metal underwent a specialized, slow-cooling tempering process, treated with a classified chemical bath to ensure near-impossible tensile strength. It was flawlessly smooth to the touch. I pulled up to the security checkpoint at 11:15. The lead watchman stood inside his reinforced kiosk, wearing the crisp, dark tactical uniform he wore every single night. "Evening," he murmured, his nod tight and entirely perfunctory. "Badge checked out. Grid 7 is operational. Stay sharp tonight." "Appreciated," I said, rolling down the window just enough to clear the scanner. "Looks like a heavy freight rotation tonight. We are running at maximum throughput, per usual. Proceed to your bay." He raised the automated barrier. The perimeter lighting was deliberately sparse, relying on high-intensity amber floods mounted on distant stanchions and small, flickering halogen fixtures along the catwalks. The thick gravel layout seemed to deaden the sound of the heavy machinery, giving the yard a bizarre, hushed atmosphere despite the presence of local logistics executives, high-ranking municipal overseers, and private transport magnates checking their manifests. A floor supervisor materialized near my station precisely 3 minutes after I logged into the terminal. He handed me a laminated, color-coded work order sheet. "Are we starting with the titanium stress tests on the lower chassis tonight?" the supervisor asked. "Not tonight," I replied. "Just the primary structural forging run." "Standard gauge." "Understood. The foundry floor has been notified." I monitored the automated feeds for nearly an hour. I checked the pressure gauges and watched the sparse crews operating the adjacent gant rise. The rhythm of the facility was completely unvarying. Men spoke in low, guarded whispers, huddled over blueprints and digital tablets, completely detached from the surrounding city. When the automated trolley returned from the central kill, it deposited a heavy, dark-treated alloy component onto my hydraulic staging table. The metal was deep charcoal, glistening with a viscous layer of synthetic coolant. The scent rising from the hot material was sharp, heavy with an oily, chemical musk that belonged entirely to this specific plant. "Run the diagnostic," the supervisor muttered from the shadow of the gantry crane before turning toward the administrative offices. I grabbed the pneumatic calipers and the micrometer. The measuring edge slid across the pristine surface with zero friction. I recorded the first dimension. The density was precisely within the tolerances I had come to expect. I took a second reading, then a third. On the fourth pass, I adjusted the manual feed handle and felt a sudden, violent shudder rattle through the entire machinery framework. A sharp, metallic snap reverberated through the steel floor. A heavy jolt traveled up the guide arm and vibrated straight into my wrists. I immediately hit the emergency stop button. The sudden mechanical seizure left my ears ringing. I pulled my protective gloves off and leaned over the housing to inspect the cutting path. The cutting head wasn't damaged, but the guide tracks were jammed. I reached down into the catch basin beneath the automated feeder, fishing through the hot, oiled metal shavings. Embedded deep within the shredded turnings was a small, foreign object. It wasn't a fragment of our alloy. I extricated it with my bare fingers. The item was heavily coated in dark industrial grease, but the unique, custom-milled grooves along its shaft were instantly recognizable. It was dense, roughly 2 inches long, and meticulously engineered from a high-grade polymer blend. The floor supervisor suddenly reappeared behind my shoulder. "Is the calibration sequence meeting your metrics?" I dropped the object into my palm and closed my fist, sliding my hand directly into my coverall pocket. "Yes," I said, keeping my breathing level and deliberate. "Everything is tracking fine. In fact, I need to log off the terminal early. I've got an unexpected family matter to attend to across town. I need to clear my locker." The supervisor's brow furrowed. "Are you certain your quota is barely halfway processed?" "Completely sure." "Thank you." He offered a curt nod and walked back toward the office stairs. My pulse was racing. Industrial anomalies happen: a broken piece of a loader bucket, a loose washer from an overhead conveyor. But the object tucked away in my pocket didn't originate from standard factory equipment. I logged out of the station, signed the departure log, and walked out into the biting night air. I drove straight back to my workshop, the tension in my shoulders hardening into a knot. Once inside my garage, I went directly to the parts washer. I pulled the polymer pin from my pocket and dropped it into the solvent tank. I switched on the pump, grabbed a stiff wire brush, and vigorously scrubbed the grease and chemical residue from the surface. When clean, I dried it with a microfiber cloth and set it under the intense glare of my LED workbench lamp. It was an opaque, bone-white polymer. The dual start threads were remarkably sharp and aggressive. The top section didn't feature a standard drive socket, it was a custom pentagonal head. I leaned down, bringing my eyes inches from the material. Along the smooth unthreaded collar, right beneath the flange, were tiny, laser-etched characters. I retrieved a jeweler's loupe from my tool chest, pressing the lens against my eye to decipher the markings. The inscription was an alphanumeric string. A specific component tracking code. I turned to my laptop, brought up an encrypted database portal, and entered the code into the global registry search. The initial query returned absolute zero. No manufacturing matches, no corporate patents. I re-examined the pin, adjusting the loop. The fifth character was a lowercase l, not a numeral one. I adjusted the string and ran the database search again. 2 entries populated the screen. Both were restricted access links to secure server directories. I bypassed the certificate warning and forced the first file to open. The document materialized. The top left corner bore the stark emblem of a specialized forensic technology firm. The document was an asset catalog for specialized mortuary and state-level cremation equipment. I scrolled through the technical schematics until the specific model code flashed on screen. The corresponding product description read, high-index maxillary anchor. High-density polymer construction. Exclusively utilized in advanced reconstructive facial masonry for severe post-mortem skeletal trauma. My chest tightened. I stared at the digital schematic, then down at the small white pin resting on my workbench. It was an implement engineered specifically to secure shattered human bone during advanced structural reconstruction. I opened a secondary window, typing in the local metropolitan grid code and the words reconstructive forensic recovery. A barrage of generic industry articles filled the interface. I filtered the inputs, appending the term unresolved disappearance. A regional bulletin from 18 days prior appeared at the top of the timeline. It detailed the unexplained departure of a prominent city infrastructure director. He had vanished entirely after leaving a late-night zoning committee meeting. His luxury vehicle had been discovered idling on an access road near the river. I scanned the body of the report. The text covered his political appointments, his municipal projects, and his medical history. A single line near the conclusion made my blood run cold. Family representatives noted he had recently completed extensive maxillofacial restoration following a high-impact transit accident the previous winter. I pushed my rolling chair back from the bench, dragging my palms down my face. It was an impossible overlap. A fluke. Perhaps an assembly line mechanic had undergone a procedure and accidentally dropped a discarded medical component into a processing bin. The logical brain desperately constructs scaffolding to protect itself from madness. I sat in the dark of my workshop for nearly an hour, trying to arrange the variables into a safe, mundane narrative. But the memory of that heavy, dark-treated alloy block resting on the staging table kept burning in my mind. Sleep never came. By 1 a.m., the absolute stillness of the house felt suffocating. I had to verify it. I wasn't about to call the precinct based on a manic internet search, but remaining stationary was no longer an option. I went to my utility locker and changed into dark canvas trousers, a heavy black utility jacket, and thick work boots. I pocketed a compact tactical flashlight and my keys. I drove back toward the industrial sector, keeping my headlights low. The commercial avenues were entirely desolate. The manufacturing facility was situated in a restricted corporate park, but the western perimeter bordered a deep, unlit railway cut where freight cars were systematically shunted. I left my vehicle in an abandoned gravel lot 3 blocks out and completed the approach on foot. The air was bitterly cold. I yanked my collar up and slip.